Ukraine, or I'm sorry, Gaza and Israel, Ukraine and Russia, and the bigger narrative, which is China versus the United States. His Excellency Abdullah bin Touk Al Mari, the Minister of Economy for the UAE, has joined us. Anthony Scaramucci, who kind of needs no introduction, but we're very excited to have him here. Julian Hawari is the CEO and founder of Special Edition, and Khaled Janahi, our host, CEO of Vision 3. Thank you so much, guys, for taking the time. I want to start with His Excellency. Over the last several years, when we look at what has happened in the region, so much momentum, so much investment in the future of the populations of UAE, of Saudi Arabia, of Qatar, and elsewhere, and also, frankly, post-COVID, the UAE in particular has been a place that everybody wants to be. Your Excellency, can you tell us, is there anything at this point that the UAE can't do?
I think, first of all, thank you, Jalan, thank the team for really having me here. I'm really great to be on stage, really talking about what's happening. And when I be in Davos every year, I always look at Davos as a place where we engage and talk about the future years of what's going to happen. But let's speak about the region and specifically what the UAE have done the last decade, and forget that as well, because what's going to happen in the next decade is totally different. See, the last decade was a very a black swan decade. Since 2008, 2007, we've seen Arab Spring, we've seen the low growth of industries, we've seen COVID-19 hit the world, we've seen high interest rate, high inflation, we've seen the war in Yemen, we've seen so there was a lot of conflicts, there was a lot of challenges, there's a lot of disruptions that's happening in the region, but the UAE maintained a policy where engaging global leaders, engaging the world, engaging economy. Policies has changed in the last 3 years. Opening the 100% ownership, opening our golden visa regimes, opening up so many things that today the UAE has become a place for the Arab youth. It's number one in the region and stays for the last 10 years that the UAE has always been a place for the Arab youth to really reside and settle and look at an opportunity. It has been a blink of hope. The Mars mission that we launched back in 2016 gave a hope mission. It was called Hope for the Arab youth, to give hope for the region, to look at the UAE as a place to be in. But all of that, last year in Davos, we were talking about fragmentation and a fragmented world. I think what we need to focus forward is what the UAE can bring is we're going to live in a fragmented world. We're going to live in a world where there is going to be a lot of fragmentation. There will be new conflicts, so we need to get used to it. And I think it's an opportunity for us to see how can we work with the world in policies, global policies. We've done local policies on state levels, on the country levels. We've done regional policies. I think global policies, and that when came COP28, for instance. COP28 is a global policy, a declaration for the world, bringing oil and gas industry to the table, committing to reduction. And I think that was the UAE game and play that they played with the leadership, focusing on global policy. The UAE can offer the world more global engagement, more global policies coming in, thinking of the world in a way that it can actually serve it as a place.
When I moved back to the region, or moved to the region, it was 2008, 2009, so on the heels of the global financial crisis. And I have seen Dubai and Abu Dhabi weathering many, many storms. In your mind, what is the greatest challenge facing the region today? Because as we're talking about GCC economies, they are dollar-based denominated economies. And so what happens with central banks, we all feel it.
Right. So the central bank questions, good friends of mine. I think as Minister of Economy, we always look at the supply and demand graph. So demand has been high. Where to reduce demand, if you speak to a central banker, he will say to reduce demand, we need to choke the demand. And to choke the demand, we need to increase interest rates. So what happened to demand? Let's understand demand first. Why demand is high? We had China coming into play a year and a half ago, opening up its trade and logistics. We have an aging economy, an aging population happening from the Americas, the Europe, and the East. What I'm saying is people moving to their 70s, 80s, and 90s and still demanding products and services. I think we're talking about a way where there's a lot of logistical issues, so demand is still high of people requiring things. We've seen a lot of population moving from low income to middle income. China alone 2 decades ago had 20 million people at middle income. There are about 700 million people today in China in middle income. Same goes to India. There's a lot of people in the middle income. What does it mean? Well, you cannot expect them to go back to factory floors, produce the products that used to be produced at low prices and run for the globe. So we expect there are going to be new ways of producing closer to markets of size. Now, with that said, that's understanding demand. Now, with supply aspect, supply cannot catch up. Now, in the pre-COVID time, a supplier would probably get a call, say, I need amount X at this date. And now he will get a call, I say, I need amount X at this date with carbon neutrality on it. So we're moving and transiting to a transition of a climate change, a carbon economy, a decarbonized economy, and we need to think about growth. Now, when we think about growth, in the past 10 decades, 100 years, economy growth, always growth with carbon emissions growing to it as well. You need factories, you need energy, you need oil and gas, you need to produce the products in order to fill the demand and supply it. Now, with that said, what we have is we need to decarbonize as well our products in the ways as well we reach to our demands. Now, with that said, it's not going to come cheaper, it's going to come higher, and it's going to come expensive. And I think with that thing, the UAE as well can think about the opportunities, working on the growth side of the supply side and helping the world to decarbonize. Let's take a numbers here. The greenhouse gases emissions for the UAE is 0.55% globally. Well, okay, if you put it per capita, we might be the first or second in the world. But 0.55% is not very hard for the UAE. We can reduce that in 2050. Then the challenge is not 0.5 for the UAE. The challenge is the US is about 15%, China is about 29, India about 14. Therefore, the question is that relies here, how can the UAE help the world to decarbonize?
And do it in a way that doesn't break them.
And does it in a way that doesn't break them. So the supply routes, supply chains, supply trade, all the ways that to process these decarbonized economy for the world. So the thinking is, how can we go with that kind of thinking to the world in a way that helps the global policy on decarbonized economy?
Yeah, Anthony, His Excellency mentioned we are living in the fragmented world that we were predicting potentially last year. Now we're there. Call the U.S. election.
Right.
Okay.
We have a bet.
We have a bet, but I have to give a backdrop. So when I got here in 2007, my first Davos, the economy, I was told by the delegation, was going to grow forever. Then we went into the global financial crisis. Then in 2009, the delegation here said that the earth was going to open and we were all going to fall into the earth. And we had the biggest bull market in global history. Then in 2016, I was told we don't need to have an election because Hillary Clinton's going to be the president. Why would we need an election? In 2020, in a room like this, the delegation said Trump was going to get reelected. Absolutely no problem. Okay, so you go around here, these men here, they 100% think Trump is going to get reelected, right?
Yep.
Yeah, right?
Biden is going to lose.
Biden's going to lose. Okay? So Trump is going to get his ass kicked. Okay, and let me explain why. Okay, he's got three things going on right now, none of which he can completely survive. Number one, he has a prosecution coming with the insurrection case, and the chief witness is his chief of staff. Does everybody understand that? The chief witness is the chief of staff. It's not an African-American prosecutor from Georgia that was hired by George Soros, all the talking points from the MAGA people. It is a former Freedom Caucus member, a hard right, white politician, is the chief witness against Trump in the insurrection case, number one. Number two, the 14th Amendment, if you really understand the 14th Amendment, the conservative judges have come out and said, if you understand the American Constitution, the conservatives are originalists. They originally interpret the Constitution, and they've all said, as originalists, he should not be able to stand for the election because of the insurrection. And maybe the Supreme Court, because it's very politicized now, will give him a break there. The documents case. You have documents that were stolen from the White House that were brought to Mar-a-Lago, and over a 5-month period of time, we lost legions of human intelligence in the field by the CIA. Okay, now you guys know there are workhorses in government and there are show horses in government, but the workhorses don't like that. And so I don't think Trump is going to even be able to be the nominee by the time we get to November. But let's say we get to November and I'm about to lose my bet to these young men. Let's say we get to November. Biden is going to beat him like a drum because Trump is crazy. And they will spend the entire time focused on that. And 42% of the American population now are registered independents. Now, I'm looking around here because I'm a good face reader. Most of you think I'm full of it, and most of you believe Trump is going to win. But I'm telling you, he's going to lose. And Cipriani's, I'm going to be ordering big steaks from you, okay? You're gonna
And
be
everyone's
paying.
invited.
I'm gonna be
Everyone's
having
invited.
10, I'm going to have 10 Negronis. I'm going to have the Cristal.
How about the
Okay,
impact
good.
on the Middle East in both cases? Sorry, because this is the key for us. Is to
Who's
understand-
moderating this, you or
I'm
me?
sorry.
And that is my question, by the way. Stand back, buddy. No, but listen, that's it. This is the issue. Wait a minute before you answer this, because everyone that I speak to, the question is Biden better for the Middle East or is Trump? And the perception has been, amongst even Democrats, that Trump technically was better for the region. However, when we think about the chaos, when we think about the Biden team's approach to what's happening with Gaza and Israel, there doesn't seem to be any sign that Trump's foreign policy for the region would be that much better. And so when you take a step back and think about this, what is more worrying? 4 more years of this policy for the Middle East
see, here-
or Trump?
Listen, I got fired after 11 days.
So shall I help you on this one?
But I work for the.
We've
Sun-
all been
I
there,
work-
by the way.
I did no problem getting fired. It's like become a time unit, you know. Prime Minister Truss got very mad at me when I said she lasted 4.1 Scaramucci's. She should have a sense of humor, right? I mean, what did I get upset? Right? Kevin McCarthy only lasted 24.4. I mean, they get upset, these politicians. They're very sensitive to politicians. Not Abdullah. He's not really a politician. That's why the country's doing so well.
I thought it was 10 days, not 11.
11. I can explain the whole thing to you. I got fired.
zones.
I got hired on the 21st and fired on the 31st.
Time zone difference.
Yeah, time zone difference
I
is way
received
ahead.
it on 10.
Oh no. It was 954,000 seconds. Sometimes I say that to my sometimes I say it that way to my therapist. It makes me feel better. But you see, what you don't know is what he was like. What you don't know is what he was like. You don't know that Rex Tillerson stepped in when there was a big fight between the Qataris and the Saudis. That Rex Tillerson had to intervene. Trump didn't understand the issues. Trump didn't know the difference between a Sunni and a Shia. Trump didn't know the Sykes-Picot Treaty. We're flying around on a Trump plane. I'm talking about the Sykes-Picot Treaty. He didn't know what it was. Okay, and when McMaster sat in the Oval Office and tried to explain to him the difference between a Sunni and a Shia, Trump got pissed because he doesn't like not knowing. He's a very insecure guy. General Milley is here. He came to my wine party last night. He was the Joint Chiefs. Get him in a corner, ask him what the guy's really like. You don't want this guy. Okay, you have a tough enough time in the Middle East with the tribalism, and you have a tough enough time with Iran. You don't want somebody this unstable and this impetuous as the American president.
Okay, walk to the Saudi narrative on this one.
If
This
we're
is-
going to choose between dementia and demented, I'm going with dementia. Go ahead.
So
much
$64
safer,
billion
much
that the Saudis have put to work, that Mohammed bin Salman has allocated to these major mega projects. The folks that I speak to who are going back and forth to Saudi Arabia say, these are a young, dynamic group of guys who want to take the money and invest it in a way that will see serious returns for the country, because they're banking on the fact that at some point they're going to have to be self-sustaining. This is a non-oil sector growth model they're looking at, and they want that to work for the population, for the region, because everybody knows that Saudi Arabia, being the largest economy in the Middle East, what's good for Saudi Arabia is good for the rest of the region. So to that end, what in your mind is the greatest challenge to Saudi today?
Okay. Can I come back to his question before I go into that? Because I think
You
it's
must.
very,
But keep it brief.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very.
You have right of reply.
No, it's going to be very, very brief. I think it does not make any difference who's going to be the president of the United States to that region. It does not make any difference. I think the region, as Abdullah said, the region actually has to be smart enough to deal with that. The region does rely on the United States. I mean, let's be clear, black and white. It does rely on the United States on the stability of the regimes. It goes without saying. But if you see the past 4 years, the way they've been starting to basically, let's call it in terms of diversifying their relationships, it's a fascinating thing the way it's been moving. Although I still believe, bottom line is, if things really, excuse my language, ladies, if shit hits the roof, the United States is the one which is going to step in. So regardless who is going to be in power, does not make much of a difference. The point that you mentioned, which Abdullah smartly, as a non-politician,
Yes.
a good diplomat, he ran away from, was the dollarization. I think actually that is a major issue for Saudi and the rest of the Arab, the Gulf countries, because they are pegged to the dollar. So that could be a problem, but I'm sure the young people like Abdullah who are looking in the next 10, 15 years, and in the other countries, they're looking into how to basically have a soft landing to be away from the dollar rather than having a hard landing. Because from what I see today, there is a hard landing coming, especially with the United States losing its head and militarizing, okay, the dollar. That is not good for anybody. At the same time, the way it's going with China, madness is there. I mean, what happens in Washington, and I'm glad for this guy because he was smart. It wasn't because the guy kicked him out after 10 days. This guy was too smart, okay, that he had to leave because what I'm just saying, he would have said,
It wasn't
what the
loud,
hell?
though. You're hurting my feelings.
Yeah.
Don't chip me out of 9% of my federal quota. Go ahead.
Okay. So I think that is an important element in terms of where they're going to go forward. Let me add one thing. For past 40 years, since I'm the oldest here, the past 40 years, every 5 years, I've been defending something stupid in the region, which is a stupid thing, is basically saying, since we're talking boom and bust, is that this big thing, which is Dubai, okay, this is gonna go, okay? It's too much. Every 5 years, I hear that. But if we look actually in the past 40 years, the city, which is called Dubai, I'm not talking about UAE, I'm talking about Dubai, what it's done is amazing. Purely from where it was to where it is. And the best thing is, since a lot of young people, they only remember 2018 onwards, if we see how Dubai took advantage of the COVID, saying it in a bad way, it was the best place which took advantage of COVID and post-COVID. When we see the Ukraine-Russian war, okay, who actually got the best out of it is Dubai. And I think that is something, and I think whatever is going to happen, anything in the fragmentation happens, which is a problem, I think Dubai is always going to be good at that and picking it up. And I think then what's happening in Saudi, what's happening in Qatar and elsewhere, we got to look, before we talk about Saudi, we got to look at the successes we've had in the Gulf, okay, which is great. I mean, the World Cup in Qatar, whatever we say, with all the negative thing, that is something which is going to be it's the best World Cup ever in terms of organization, in terms of everything. And it's going to be actually unique World Cup because everything was done in the same place. All the 32 teams were in the same city. They were not outside the city. So even the Saudi one, which is going to happen in 2032, okay, is going to be different cities and
It's a
different.
catalyst for
It's a
bringing
yeah.
these kinds of events.
So what I'm saying is we've had successes. Abdullah spoke about the COP28. It was fantastic. I was there, and we're involved in the philanthropy and the business side of it. But it's great the way they approached it. So success. The thing they had before that, the Expo, great. And I'm sure the Expo in Saudi is going to be great because they're spending a lot of money. I'm sure the thing about the World Cup in Saudi is going to be great once it happens. However, we have other issues that we have to think about. And the Middle East is not the Gulf. The Middle East is the rest of the Middle East. We are only, as the Gulf people, we have 55 million people living there, of which around 25 are foreigners. Okay? Only 30 million of us are basically locals, and majority are Saudis. So Saudi is the main player in the GCC. And I see actually eventually a federation of the GCC because that's the only way they can, in a real fragmented world in the future, to handle what goes on, they have to come together as a federation rather than being the way they are today, independent. But they're going to be independent like the United States in terms of different states. So that's important. But even with the Gulf, when I talk about that we have 25 million foreigners living in the Gulf, we have a major issue that we all know it's a problem, and we are trying to tackle, and that we have 7 million unemployed. And these are, by the way, recorded unemployed. Imagine the unrecorded unemployed. There are a lot of us are living in our parents' houses, having fun, but we cannot get a job. They are not recorded unemployed. Now, when you look at the rest of the Arab world, then you go to the Levant, you go to Egypt, and you go to the rest of, that is the major problem which is facing. That's the time bomb that I see which needs to be managed. In a world where things would not be as rosy as they are today.
And the GCC
Yeah,
cannot be dependent upon to pay
for me,
that.
the reason I said Dubai, Abdullah, I have to be careful because he's a UAE minister. He's not a Dubai minister. But the reason I said Dubai has gone through all this, Okay, the financial crisis, whatever happened before, the first Gulf War, the second, it has gone through all that, and it's been basically successful. And I think Dubai will carry on being that. But the rest of the Arab world as a whole has to manage these issues which is coming at it. And I think as an investor, someone actually very big, as big as this gentleman on my right here, in terms of investing, say, where is the money for the next 10 years? It's in the Gulf. That's where we have to go. That's what we're going to raise. For me, is what happens after the 10 years.
I'm going to nominate you for Secretary of State
For
in
five-
the Trump administration.
For 5 days.
You're going to last a lot longer than that.
Okay, Khaled, what,
He needs your help.
and this
Well,
is
go
a
ahead.
question for His Excellency as well. What about the price of oil? How closely tied is the success of what you're doing in the UAE and what Saudi Arabia is attempting to do as well to the oil price? Because if the oil price drops to a certain level, we're in trouble, no?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, if I may, let me take that on. Dubai has gone through that. For me, Dubai has gone through that, and Dubai will go through that. Okay, it's by virtue of luck, but I don't think it's luck.
You mean
I
Abu
think
Dhabi.
I think no, I'm talking
Yeah,
Dubai.
this is Abu Dhabi.
No. The reason I'm talking Dubai, Dubai has gone through the ups and downs
Yes.
of the oil. Okay, prices being up, they've done well. Prices being down, they've done well. The rest of the Gulf, they've not. It has been a problem for them, and the and we know 2016 was a major problem for the Gulf because the oil price
Yep.
went down. Okay, and the way that they came at it, and with the IMF support, somebody's paying them. I don't know if it's the Ministry of Economy paying them up, but somebody else. Okay, they come and say these countries have to diversify their revenues, and the diversification of revenue is basically taxation. So the world, in that world, which is basically a rentier economy, suddenly is changing. And that's an important challenge that the people in the government, they need to think about, because since 73 or 70, that part of the world, people get free education, free health, free everything is paid for, get housing, get jobs, get everything is done for them. Okay?
It's all over.
It's all over now. Now, actually, it is little by little they're taking from the people, and they're going to take more. Now, poor Biden has been used for taxing 9% in UAE and taxing, say, in Bahrain 15%, and other countries 15 to 20%. So they're using that as a way of doing taxation. But that actually is not good news, because a sudden shift from being a rentier economy to being a real economy. But if you want to be a real economy, there are a lot of challenges that you've got to move from here to here.
Yeah.
And there is a lot to deal with. And I think Abdullah mentioned something, and I want to come back. I'm a Bahraini, I was born in Bahrain, but I might sound more from Dubai than Bahrain. But Dubai has been very smart with the rule of the law and the legal redress. I'm talking Dubai in the past. And that's one reason of success of Dubai, that people have invested and come back to Dubai. So I think those are challenges that these countries have to have. But meanwhile, you cannot have a fantastic life and make money and everything else whilst your neighbors, either they're having problems, like Egypt. And Egypt, we should not forget, Egypt has major challenges to it. So we need to manage those things, and it's not by virtue of paying $15 billion every year to Egypt. How long are you going to pay that?
Burning money.
You're burning money. So I think these are the challenges that we got to think of for the future.
Your Excellency, before I come to you, Julian, just one question for you, sir, just in terms of that oil
I can pass.
narrative,
No.
which is how closely dependent? I mean, if oil drops below $60,
I'll say
how long can it stay there before the UAE hurts, before the region hurts?
Well, let me just. I want to answer a little bit of a question that talks about the weaponization of the dollar, de-dollarization aspect. So the dollar is a financial instrument that the world trusts the United States to print, and for the United States not to abuse the printing of the dollar. With that, the countries in the world has dollars in their central banks. The countries in the world has their monetary system pegged to the dollar. And that will always be the same. And that will not change. Now, what happens if there's dealings in different currencies? That's fine, but the dollar will still be a strong instrument in what we do. Now, the petrodollar is something else, when I'm going to come back to the point saying that we deal in the dollars in trading oil. And I think that's something as well which is the importance. Now, with the fragmented world that we're going to live in, yes, there's going to be a fragmentation of the world. Trade is going to be done in different currencies, in different ways. And that's something different. But the dollar still has a strong position and holds a strong position in central banks and monetary policies and going forward. Now, the aspects of creating barrels of oil, we are the most efficient and most cheapest oil barrel made in the world. I think this goes down to, I'm not sure the numbers, but something around $1.20 a barrel. So whatever the price of oil goes up and down, it's for the UAE. At the end of the day, we have explored new areas. We know we invested in the last couple of years as well into the exploration. And I think the point of the sustainable growth of the UAE's economy, we have grown in the last 3 years. So 2022 for us was an exceptional year. 7.9% GDP growth. 7.2% is non-oil. 2023 we grow 3.5, 3.6 because of the interest and inflation. But non-oil is 5.9%. And this year we're expected by the World Bank and the IMF to grow between 4, 5, maybe 5.5% GDP growth. I'm expecting more in non-oil. For the first time in the UAE's history, the non-oil economy is up to 74% of the GDP. And we want to grow that. We have a sustainable economy moving forward. We want to reach up to 80% and more on different types of new economies. Now with the investments, with the FDI coming into the UAE, we hit the record high in the region, in the Middle East. We're the number one, $23 billion in 2022. We had about $20 billion in 2021. We're breaking records in the last 3 years. And we're going to keep breaking records in the next couple of years as well. And that's the most important aspect of bringing FDI in, bringing investments in new areas, in new economy, new sustainable growth. And that's where we're thinking about. Now, the oil can go up and down as much as it wants. We don't really want to be in that area. You remember what happened in oil in COVID time? It was the States was a negative oil sell. Who wants an economy that depends on an oil that goes up and down, a volatile state? That's not a way to design a budget or look at the investments or looking at the way. So the leadership in the UAE has focused KPIs and moving to a sustainable economy, moving away from oil, focusing on investments in new economies, and that's what we are.
I'm coming to you, Julian. Just one question. In your mind, Anthony, was the decision by the Biden administration, and obviously egged on by the situation that was happening between Ukraine and Russia, but the decision to weaponize the dollar, are we going to be here in a decade and say that was the catalyst, that was the turning point for the U.S. in terms of being, leading the world?
Can I answer this? Can I half answer
may,
this for
yeah.
Anthony? The dollar is not weaponized yet.
You don't believe?
No. Please.
Oh, I mean, I get Abdullah's point, but I think I think he's right from a clinical sense, but from a perception sense, the perception is that we've used sanctions and we've used some level of weaponization. If you read the book,
Or that we're willing to.
We're willing to. If you read the book Treasury Wars, which was a phenomenal book written about 10 years ago, it talked about what the U.S. did after 9/11 in terms of identifying, closing down accounts, freezing assets. Obviously, you have this $350 billion of assets have been frozen. But Abdullah's technically correct. It hasn't been weaponized yet. But I think that the bigger issue for the United States is what does the United States want to be 80 years after World War II? Because we're still operating off of a footprint and an idea that existed in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, and maybe in the 80s. And so if you look at our military footprint, you look at our military preparedness, it's not designed for the world we're living in today. Just look at the way the Houthis are attacking our ships in the Red Sea, and if you ask anybody in the military, they don't like the design of the military. And I'm going to tell you something that I worry about in the United States is the lobbying. And I want everybody to think about this for a moment. We have 535 people in the Congress. We have one president. That's 536 people are controlling 25% of the country's GDP, 7% of the world's GDP. So I want you to think of the concentration of power. There's 536 people. Is there any wonder why there's $20 billion a year lobbying those people in Washington? And so if you look at our military today, we're spending $1 trillion on the military, and we're probably getting $500 billion of value because all the prices are inflated, all the prices are inflated on the missiles, All the prices are inflated on the toilet seats, on the hammers. You go right through the list. And this is a result of what Eisenhower talked about, the military-industrial complex. And so real leadership requires reform of that. And when you go to reform that, they write really bad stories about you. You know, when you're in Washington, they look at you and they say, okay, can this guy be bought or can't be bought? If he can be bought, it's not a swamp, by the way, just so you know, it's a gold-plated hot tub.
Some hops.
If you can be bought, they give you 2 cigars, a bottle of Cristal, sit in the hot tub with them. But if you can't be bought, they make up stories about you. They try to get you out of there because there's a circuit going on. So it's not the weaponization of the dollar that I'm worried about. It is the control of the lobbyists over the projection of what is going to happen to the United States and the way we're designing our military footprint, our banking system. You know, I've learned a lot in the UAE. I'm going to say something that people who are American should really listen to. Okay, they have depoliticized the regulatory process in the UAE. Does everybody understand that? So we met with one of the Dubai regulators, right, in Samaritz. What was her name?
Deepa Raha Karbal, who works for Halal.
You know Deepa. Okay, so she has full authority to regulate in terms of what is right for financial innovation and what is right for the country. She doesn't have Elizabeth Warren calling her and saying, you know, today I don't like crypto. I don't really understand it, but I don't like it. Do everything you can to block it. Do you see what's going on in the United States? These are the things that worry me about the United States. We need to depoliticize certain things. We need stronger leadership that can say, okay, here are the problems. Not going to get solved today or tomorrow, but here's the 10-year plan. Here's a 15-year plan. Anybody in this room that's an American, do you know any politician in the United States has said, oh, here's my 15-year plan to right-size entitlements. Here's my 15-year plan to fix the deficit and what's going on with the out-of-control spending. What about the K through 12 uneven education system? You know any politician that's sitting there and says, okay, we can fix this because we made the problem, so therefore we can fix it. But no one's doing that. That's the stuff that I'm worried
They
about.
got to get elected every 2 years or 4 years, right?
Well, the process. And there's another thing going on. You see, Nikki Haley squandered a big opportunity. See, Barack Obama in 2008, he was an entrepreneur. He had the Clintons against him. He had 30 Democratic governors that endorsed Hillary Clinton. And he had the Democratic machine against him. And they said, oh, you're a nice young man. You're going to be our HUD secretary. Why don't you go to the back? But what did Obama do? He created a new market. Okay, there's 144 million people in the United States. It's the most powerful voting bloc in the United States. They vote the same way in every single election. The non-voter. They don't show up to vote.
Yep.
And there's a huge opportunity as an entrepreneurial politician to go after that voter. Nikki didn't do that. DeSantis didn't do that. They're playing in Trump's backyard with a small pool of voters. But Obama went this way, and he beat her. We have a real problem in the country because of these things.
Julian, you and I have been having a long-term conversation about Dubai and Dubai, but much more broadly, the Gulf Arab countries, and what they are doing and what they have done, frankly, so very rapidly, not just to attract folks during a time of COVID from the international sort of landscape, but also to invigorate their own population. And you were telling you were just in the United States, and it was as if you were visiting a third world country.
Yeah, I mean, let me put some
Breaks my heart.
context here for my American friends. But basically, let me ask the audience, who has been to the region, to Abu Dhabi, Dubai, or Riyadh? And who has never been and who wants to be there? Okay. So you want to go back, okay. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, who in the world would have think that the hottest city to be in the world are going to be called Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Riyadh, even Doha? That is part of it. There has been a profound transformation, and I think it's
We agree.
to discuss on all this, but there is one thing that is missing in the conversation that has been vital. It has been the youth empowerment. There has been a transformation of the countries. There has been a way of doing things that are completely transformed, and you have young leadership at ministerial level, at all level, being in the UAE, being in Saudi Arabia, being in Qatar. And it has made things move so much faster. You were talking about my visit. I was visiting last June the US. It was my first time to the West Coast. Stopped by some European cities on the way. When you look at the infrastructure, you look at the service, you look at the food, you compare it to the Gulf, you feel that there is 10 years difference. The Gulf has been moving extremely fast. And today we were talking about price of oil. Yeah, price of oil will go down. But will the human capital change in the region? I doubt. They've been able to ride through good times through financial discipline. Will the hard time hit the region? Of course, we're not insulated. We're part of a global economy. If China suffers, if the US and Europe suffer, the region is going to be impacted. But you see everything the region has been doing. It's mind-boggling. You talked about the mega project. Where in the world you've seen so many mega projects happening simultaneously? Will they achieve 100%? Doesn't matter. Even if they achieve 20 or 30%, there has been a shift on the way the world look at the region. We were talking earlier. 6 years ago, the UAE appointed an AI minister. Probably people look at it, AI minister. And then the last 2 years, all of a sudden, it was like, oh my God, how were they ahead of the rest? And again, it's not the story just in the UAE. Saudi has been going through a transformation that is insane. Look at Qatar. Qatar, up till the World Cup, everybody was like, oh, it's going to be the worst. It went smooth. So something is taking place in the GCC. And ideally, again, I might be on the la-la land and be, oh, he look always positive. I wish it is the emergence of a new world. Because in the GCC, whoever you are, whatever your religion, you're welcomed. As long as you're a hard worker, you're ready to contribute, is meritocracy. It was the US used to be, or at least has been promoting globally, that you're seeing today at play in this part of the world.
Yeah, Your Excellency, I asked you this a bit earlier when we were sitting inside the green room. A few years ago, when I was sitting on a different stage in Abu Dhabi talking to one of your colleagues, I asked, about this very same idea, which is that the UAE is the Switzerland of the Middle East. And he said, we are a place that benefits from crises globally, but at the same point, we want to be a neutral ground, in a sense. How difficult is that going to be to maintain, given what we're seeing right now between China and the United States, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, and obviously what's happening with Gaza and Israel?
I think what's happening in the last 2 years or 3 years in the UAE, our leadership really focuses on the global stage. We've been invited as guest country for the G20 for the last 3 consecutive years. We are a guest country now in G20 in Brazil. So the UAE really plays a big role. We joined the BRICS early this month. So the engagement that the UAE is doing globally in a way that really brings the world, even in a fragmented world we were talking about. We hosted Expo back in 2020. We hosted COP28. This engagement opportunity is huge. We're the largest, the UAE is the largest delegation to Davos. We've been here for the last 3 decades. And we've been bigger and bigger. We have a huge pavilion on the way the promenade towards the
Coffee's great in there,
the
brother.
coffee, we have a nice hot chocolate, with chai tea, and that's something really nice. Never had it before. But this is an amazing way to say the UAE really engages on different levels, on different platforms. And that's where with the world of fragmentation is happening, we're living it at the moment. We need to really work around so many things. Now with the Gaza situation, for instance, His Highness the President, meeting with his, counterparts of presidents, calling up, trying to, soothe the issue down. And His Highness Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the amount of trips and visits and phone calls is happening in the last 4 months, trying to really reduce the tension, reduce the issues that's happening, and stop killing the innocent people. And that's something which is important, and aspects of really what the UAE leadership is trying to play a role in the region, a role in the globe, around the fragmentation that we're having.
I was just in the UAE, and I had a chance to sit down with Israel's ambassador to Abu Dhabi. We had a long conversation, and he expressed to me how grateful he was for the interaction that he's had at the highest levels in the UAE government. Is the UAE prepared to rebuild Gaza today, to be a part of that rebuild? because they're going to need a lot of help.
I think what the UAE's played in Gaza
Excuse me.
in the past, we have at the moment the campaign, the Noble Man campaign, Noble Man 3 actually campaign happening at the moment. We have launched 47 million dirhams yesterday for Mohammed bin Rashid global initiative. Just yesterday we announced it to Gaza, and I think there's a lot has been committed and moving forward. And I think what the UAE plays a role is not just the commitment of rebuilding, but the commitment of with the Gaza people, with the world, to really reduce the tensions happening. You know, I want to say something I think which is important, an aspect of, in the past, economy in the world was a driver in the car. Today, economy in the world is on the side steps, while geopolitics and politics are driving the car. The UAE still has economy driving the car, and geopolitics and politics are part of the car. And I think that's the way we're moving forward. How do we make sure we go back to the supply and demand chart? How do we make sure we meet the demand of people, of items, of food, of products, of energy? That is the demand that we need to meet. If you want to talk, let's talk renewable energy. How do you meet the demand of renewables? We need critical minerals supply. Where are they? How do we process them? How do we bring them in? And how do we create energy? You know, there's 1 billion people of population around the world doesn't have energy at the moment. And that number is going to increase in the next couple of years. And I think the important aspects of what the UAE is doing is to really look at the world and say, how can we help the world in different ways, in different manners? And I think that's where we are, and that's where all the policy is going to be.
If I may, actually, talking about neutrality, because comparing Switzerland, I mean, one reason Dubai, actually, they were so smart, they benefited from Switzerland losing its neutrality when it came to the Ukraine-Russia.
I wanted to say that.
Yeah, I think that's important. And I live here, and I feel it. So, and talking about bankers feel it big time, because it does not make sense. Somebody born here, suddenly he finds, because his dad or his granddad is related somewhere, he gets all his accounts frozen or whatever. So these are things that actually created. And the good thing about Dubai is that they immediately, they were ahead of time. They basically grabbed it. They became the real Swiss rather than the Swiss. So I hope Switzerland becomes the Dubai of Europe again. That's very, very important. But one thing actually this gentleman said here, which if I was Abdullah, I'll get upset. He said, the young ministers in the thing. Now this guy is very old in comparison to the other guys in the team. But I think in terms of...
You're really flattering.
No,
I got my first white hair.
yeah.
So.
To your question, whether
I can help you fix that,
whether you
got a really good colorist.
involved in whatever is going to happen post, say, the morning after the night before, and this miserable thing that we see in that part of the world. UAE definitely will be. Matter of fact, UAE already was in his friend's book called Deal of the Century, in Jared Kushner's book. I mean, UAE were giving the biggest checks along with Saudi, along with Qatar. They were the biggest check players. So now rebuilding Gaza is going to come back.
Did you read Jared's book?
Unfortunately, yes. Okay. But by the way, within 750 seconds, I finished it. So it wasn't bad. But I think the problem that we have in Gaza, which is not just going to be Gaza, you're going to have a much bigger problem sooner or later in other places in that part of the world. And I think, as Abdullah said, yes, UAE is going to be contributing, but what you want to do, actually, you want to contribute to create jobs for that part of the world and create, you cannot, I mean, when you read the Deal of the Century book, it's like so-called peace to prosperity. We take money, we give you just shut up and enjoy life and have fantastic life. Life is not like that. Whilst the other side has everything else, so-called democracy, but you just have money, have good time, and that's it. That's not going to work. So what you got to do, you got to think of sustainability. I think the word sustainability is very, very important. I bring actually the word sustainability with meritocracy. I think the world is changing as a whole into meritocratic way, because no longer newscasters are going to be like CNBC or CNN or whatever. Today we have 1 billion newscasters. 1 billion newscasters we have, okay? Where actually sometimes it's with 500 million different views, the way it's going around. And that's why what's going around us, no longer it is controlled by the Western media, so-called Western free media, because there is no free media anymore. And we've seen this conflict has shown that there is no free media. The media actually is bought into one way or the other. So I think UAE, Saudi, and the rest of these countries, if I was, since I'm not, I'm just a bystander looking in, I would actually put my money in terms of developing that part of the world in real terms
no
with
one's
me.
gonna do it for you.
Yeah, I mean Egypt, look, 130 million people. Okay, it's fantastic. You have the Sahel al-Shamali, you have this new Cairo capital city, whatever. How many people can afford $1 million apartment? I'm talking about Egyptians. How many of them out of 130 million? These are things that we should be thinking about. How many of those 130 million have jobs? How many of those 130 million are living under the poverty line? Now, these are matters which are important for the region, and that's why I believe that by 2040, we're going to have a federation of these Gulf countries rather than having this 6 separate countries with different by the way, Abdullah will not be happy with this. I don't know why the GCC countries have basically, since the monetary policy is done by somewhere in Washington, why do they have central banks? Because it doesn't make sense to me. Because it can be one telex coming from the Fed, and they basically into the Ministry of Economy, and the Ministry of Economy says, yes, okay, things have changed. So
It's not the Ministry of Economy.
I think we need to all go to this.
That's
dinner.
central banks.
central banks, yeah.
But one question I want to ask of Anthony. Okay, fine. You've called the election, and we have another 4 more years of Biden, which will be Kamala, I imagine.
Likely.
Well, yeah. And so, okay, if that's the reality, to your mind, in covering the region for the last 15 years, one of the questions that I've often asked Americans, officials on both sides of the aisle, when they come to our part of the world, I ask them specifically about China. I say, listen, China is here. They are active. They are building. They are willing to spend money and to create real partnerships. They're the largest foreign direct investor in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE. And I have heard from various officials offers to mediate between Washington and Beijing when they hit a roadblock. And when I speak to those in the State Department and elsewhere, and the White House, there is such anathema to the idea that would be something that A, we would need as the U.S., or B, that we would engage in. Do you think that that's going to have to evolve and to shift, given, frankly, what is the failure of the Biden administration, whether it be on oil and energy policy or on Gaza, Israel, to have the confidence and to lead when it comes to the Middle East? Because that isn't going to change.
So the question, though, is about China's role in the Middle East?
Well, should the
China's
United
role
States
with the
be
United States?
engaging with countries like the UAE, like Saudi Arabia, who have much better relationships with Beijing?
So, yes is the answer to that. But this is, you see, we're in an ego-based time in leadership. Okay, what is the brilliant hallmark of the UAE, and this comes from the president himself, he's transformed the leadership there. He's made it less about ego and more about collaboration and community and the ethos of the country. Like when you go to the Majlis at the palace and you sit with the president, you can feel his aura, and his aura from good leadership goes down. Abdullah feels it. Khaldoon feels it. They know that they have somebody that's watching their back. If Abdullah, God forbid, made a mistake, MBZ, the president, is going to be by his side and help him. He's going to be there. If you made a mistake in the Trump administration, he's going to put a tweet out. He's going to start the steamroller, and you're going to be Elmer Fudd as he's running over you with the steamroller. Okay, so the culture is an ego-based culture. If you read Robert Lighthizer book, okay, he was the U.S. trade representative. He's a very close personal friend of mine. You will understand how the U.S. currently feels about the trade relationship with China. So the U.S., whether you like it or not, they feel there's been a $700 billion a year, $7 trillion in the last 10-year transfer of wealth to China. And they feel, rightly or wrongly, that the advantages that were given to China in the World Trade Organization were never regulated properly. So they came in as an emerging nation. They got all the benefits of an emerging nation, all the benefits in terms of the mismatch in tariffs. And as the country grew, we never right-sized it. Okay, they took Nixon's at his word. Okay, it's a very seminal moment for China. He went to China. He wanted help with the Soviet Union. He allowed the Chinese to peg their renminbi to the U.S. dollar. Why is this important? Because when Deng Xiaoping got the job, he moved for industrialization and a free market system. But we're printing money. Abdullah just said it. When you print money, there's only one way to pay it back. You have to monetize. The country can never pay back the money that's been borrowed with dollars that are worth what we borrowed. We're going to pay it back with dollars that are worth less. But when you have an industrialized country like China rising and the currency's pegged to a monetizing country, you see the benefit they got? They devalued their currency at a time when their currency should have been going up in value due to their industrialization. They were able to devalue. And the U.S. allowed this to happen. What did Clinton say? He wanted rising prosperity in China. He wanted to pull people out of poverty, and he wanted to integrate. But the mistake was there's two different systems. The democracies don't fight with each other, but these are two different systems. And so now the American leadership, both the Republican and the Democratic leadership, has been antagonized by this. So I'm a business person. I'm not a politician. So when I sit with the politicians, I ask them two questions. Number one, is the Chinese Communist Party going to be running China in 10 years? Yes or no?
I would say yes.
Okay, so I'm going to say yes to that. In
Well,
20
we are in business, that's why.
in 25.
Well, if you ask a politician, that's a different.
Yeah, well, he doesn't want to answer, and I respect that. But my point is, they're there, and you have to figure out a way to engage with them, and you have to figure out a way to soften the relation. Now, Blinken understands that. He just gave remarks this morning. He's fully engaged. They're engaged at the presidency, the national security level. They're fully engaged. But there's antagonism, stealing each other's ideas, stealing AI, blocking chips, worried about Taiwan. And all due respect to my friends in the Gulf, this is America and China in an ego fight.
Yeah.
If you got the UAE in to mediate or Bahrain to mediate, they're not going to do it because of the way the egos are set up. Do you see what I mean? Not that they couldn't be helpful, not that they don't have better relationships, but you have to understand the 50-year history of what's gone on between the U.S. and China. Once you understand that, you can come up with a policy.
Yeah, but then you've got on the other side where you've had China, actually, the big event in terms of political thing, rapprochement between Iran and Saudi. China was, okay, they were not the ones who did the dirty work, but they are the ones who seen that they are the ones who
Well,
did it.
calling it a rapprochement,
Yeah.
and the actuality of it is
No, actually, not to the contrary. I think there is behind the closed doors. I think there is both UAE and Saudi. I think they have a lot of secret visits and meetings, and things are pretty hanky-dory between those two countries and Iran.
We
This
have
is
one
my.
question
I'm a businessman. That's
Listen,
my.
I
belief.
want to
From
put
Arab
my
News.
conference in China because, as I told the Bloomberg people yesterday, put your conference back in
Yeah.
Beijing. More engagement is better than less engagement.
I
Let
agree.
the business community lead the politicians back to some type
You
of
go back to my car, right?
De-escalation.
Leave the private business and the economy in the driving seat.
I'm going to eat so much food on your expense account. You have no idea how much food.
Faisal Abbas has
I'm going
a
to
question
starve
in
for
the-
2
in the
days before I
audience.
go to
ahead.
Cipriani's in the IFC.
Thank you. I want to follow up. First of all, thank you, Hadley, Mariam Forum, and Trends. This has made my Davos worthwhile.
Oh, yay!
Coming from the Middle East, I think this is one of the best sessions I've heard. I want to follow up on two things. One thing that Khalid said and one thing that Anthony said. Khalid, I stand with everything, and as a Saudi, we couldn't be happier for what's happening in the UAE and the boom. The session is called Boom
Or
Bust.
bust.
I agree with you. The UAE has positioned itself as the Switzerland of the Middle East, or the new Switzerland of the world, actually. My question to His Excellency, there is only so much money that come into the UAE from Russia, from Ukraine, from troubled parts of the world. We've seen, to look at one, sorry, let me repeat that. To look at one example, particularly the property market in Dubai, we've seen a tremendous boom in that, and the prices have gone ridiculously high up, which is for the economy a good thing. My question to you is: this sustainable, or are we going to see that bubble burst anytime soon? The second question is for Anthony. I want to follow up on what you just said. So you were betting that Trump isn't going to make it to become the Republican candidate. So my question to you is, who would you put your money on if it's not going to be Trump?
Okay.
And a follow-up on that is there are words that the Democratic Party might be changing horses the last minute, and it's not going to be Kamala. Who would you put your money on the Democratic Party?
Okay, so those are good questions, but let
No,
let his
He wants to think about his question.
no, he's more powerful than me. You want to think about? Let him go first.
So let's talk about the property boom and so forth. The property real estate in the UAE's economy is about 5% of GDP. Now pricing goes up and goes down. How we have seen it. We have seen it in 2007, 2008. It's actually normal and natural for properties to go up and down, not just in the UAE, but globally. And for it to go and come down, for the end of the day, as an investors or people buying it to reside and live and live happily in the UAE, there's a lot of offers and opportunities out there. I think what's the opportunity here, there's a lot of, people see the UAE nowadays differently than they see them 2 decades ago. 2 decades nowadays, 2 decades ago, the investment was from a real estate perspective, from an investment perspective. Today, the investment in the UAE is not just an investment. It's investment for life. It's investment to live there, to be part of the economy, to work, to be part of the UAE's environment and be there. So when people ask the people who's buying them, they say that we buy them to actually reside. And when you look at where the purchasing are happening in real estate, they're more into villas. COVID times, people were hanged up in apartments. They wanted a backyard to do some barbecue and to enjoy their time with their kids. So the villa properties are going up. Now the apartments, no, we have very affordable apartments selling off as well. I think the real estate aspect is something that's normal, it's natural, it goes up and down. It's 5% of our GDP. We want to sustain as well away. We want to make sure that we want a sustainable economy as well, diversified from everything else as well.
Do you see it continuing growing?
Well, yes. If the GDP, if my economy is growing, real estate has to grow. I need to have people to live, and I can't have them all virtual. I have them to come over to buy somewhere, rent somewhere, and live in the UAE and
So no
enjoy.
worries about a bust.
Enjoy city walk, enjoy the Lamer, enjoy the beaches in the UAE, enjoy the fantastic restaurants. We have a Michelin star as well in the UAE.
And Cipriani restaurant.
Cipriani's as well. We have a couple of them. Happening.
Because I know
So no worries about a property
I
bust.
know the food is overpriced.
Right.
That's why I want to go.
We are looking at, the end of the day is the growth. So how do you grow? You grow when you look at the economy. I'll go back to my advisors. We need to look at how we're going to grow, where we're going to grow. If we are growing economy, there should be a real estate accompanying that. If you don't have affordable housing or living spaces, you're going to have a problem like California has, for instance. San Francisco, for instance. Companies are moving out. You don't want to end up doing that, right? You don't want to end up to have a space that's rented 10 times more the last 10 years. You have an increase every year. You need to have affordability, and you have to have availability as well. So the move of more real estate, if we are growing at 7% non-oil every year, expect there should be affordable housing coming across. That's my important aspect when it comes to economic growth.
And Anthony?
I want Abdullah to be the mayor now of San Francisco. I'm gonna send you over there to fix it. The thing that he's saying, which I find amazing, as I got trained as an economist, the economic organic table of the UAE, they took all of the elements to create prosperity off the organic table. So when you talk about boom or bust, even if there is a bust, it will be a temporary bust on the way to a boom. Obviously, the economies are cyclical, but they have created a footprint of prosperity and economic diversity because they understand it, but it comes from the top. They have this ethos and this culture. And so that's why I agree with everything that
Do you remember your question?
said. No, I got the question. Okay, so whoever has if Trump is knocked out, and remember, I think he's the Al Capone of American politics, and so Al Capone was untouchable. John Gotti was Teflon Don. The Department of Justice has got him right in the crosshairs, okay? And the wheels of justice turn slowly. But let's say he beats it at all. Let's say he really is the Teflon Don. He will lose to Biden. That's my prediction. Number two, if he doesn't make it to the nomination, whoever has the most money left out of the remaining candidates is going to be the nominee. That's just the way it works with the Republicans. So right now it'll be Nick. No, DeSantis was running out of money because he spent it all in Iowa and New Hampshire. I want to give you these stats, okay? Trump, because of the name recognition, former president, $340 per vote in Iowa. DeSantis, $2,000 per vote, meaning the money that was spent. Nikki Haley, $1,740 per vote. Okay, so Trump can do it a lot more economically because of the name brand and because of the mouth and the way he operates, right? But Haley will have the most money because the venture capitalists are backing her. The Wall Street people are waiting to back her. Now, will she or will she not be a good president? That I don't know. Could she beat Biden? In my opinion, I think she could beat Biden. If Biden's not running, it's going to be Gavin Newsom, 100%, because they've laid the groundwork for him, and he's a smart, articulate guy, and he can raise the money. Okay, but now he's created a disaster in California, though. Look at California. This is why we got to get Abdullah out to San Francisco. But we'll see. That's the answer to the question.
But I think Faisal's question and the response by Abdullah, which was the two, we got to get the two correct here. I mean, Abdullah's saying there is growth in the economy.
And affordability.
Yeah, and real estate is part of that. But in terms of the bust in real estate, of course you're going to have busts.
Yeah, it's
I mean, let me just give you an example. Today, and here's Abdullah was very careful with the way he put it, is that we're going to create, because we need to have more supply. We need to have more supply of affordable apartments. What's happening today, which is an issue, which you look back 4 years ago and you look at today in Dubai, mainly Dubai, because that's the place, is that off-plan, everybody's buying off-plan, but off-plan, when the cost of something to build that, say, $10, and you sell it off-plan for $15 or $20, that's acceptable, that's the norm. But when you sell it for $60, and that's the way it's going, sooner or later that's going to come down. But that does not affect the growth of the economy, because the economy can carry on growing. But if you are buying that for, say, $60, while actually you should not be paying more than $20, then you should be ready for that bust of 60 to 20 and short to medium term. Maybe in long term comes back, but not in short to medium term. So I think that's an important thing, just to get that right. But one important factor, since Faisal raised the question, what I like about the region is the competition. I love there is competition now in the region, and that is good that the region is basically picking up, because once you compete. Again, I use Dubai as an example. One smart thing that Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid did in the beginning of the millennium is that he allowed competition from within the people coming to him. There are 3 pillars of the competition when they started. There were, of course, a lot of ups and downs, but what happened that these people, because we're all human, pushed each other up, which meant actually that Dubai was improving, okay, because there was competition between even people from within. I think that I like. I like competition between Saudi and Abu Dhabi. I love it, between Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. I love the competition between Doha and Dubai. It's good because it's pushing. Sometimes it creates a problem, but it's good for overall. So that we're having the growth that Abdullah's talking about. Part of it actually is competition driven, and I like that.
And Your Excellency, before we let you off the hook, because I do feel we've beat you about a little bit, who's going to win that competition? Saudi Arabia? UAE?
I would answer that.
No, I can't.
I think the answer. I think His Excellency can answer for
no,
himself.
The GCC.
But he can't answer it.
The GCC and people will win, because it's pushing for everybody to go up, because even the locals in every place, they are pushing each other, and it's good for them.
Your Excellency.
Thank you.
That's why he's so good. See, the economy of words.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for an answer.
You're still waiting for
Yeah.
the answer. That's the answer. I think if we look at 3 years ago, competition was there. Competition is always there. Competition is going to be there. We grew. Saudi Arabia grew, UAE grew, Sultanate of Oman grew, the Kingdom of Bahrain grew, Kuwait grew, the GCC grew. I did 7.9% in 2022. We did 3.6% in 2023. Half of I didn't have the numbers yet, but half of 2023, 3.6. I'm so happy. Saudi Arabia did the same. 2 point, all right, 2 point something. But that's the reason of interest rate and high inflation. Now, the next couple of, the World Bank and the IMF is expecting the Gulf to grow at an average between 4 and 5 and maybe 5.5% of growth in 2024. So where's competition? Competition is really helping growth.
Yeah. So you're not worried about Saudi Arabia?
If there is competition and I'm degrowing, show me there is a competition that doesn't have innovation and growth. None. No way. UK has competition, the US has competition, the world has competition. If you don't have we have a competition law for anti-competition. in the UAE. We want competition in the economy. You know, this was a lunch I had with Julian like 3 years ago, and he said, Julian, what do you want? He said, I want more competition in the UAE's market we're talking about. I went back. We launched a law in competition 3 months ago, asking for more competition and not to have a monopoly happening in one area. That's competition because we need innovation, we need movement, we need growth. Bottom line, I need jobs. I need to create jobs. Everyone wants to create jobs.
Let me jump in, Hadley, if you allow me. Again, I'm going to turn to the room. And again, I'm not stigmatizing because every country around the world is doing fantastic things, every city. You've offered to job or to move your company. One hand, and again, Dubai, not just Dubai as Dubai, Dubai as the region, San Francisco. Who moves to Dubai? Raise your hand. Who moves to San Francisco?
Goodness for growth.
Okay, that's what we're talking about.
heartbreaking.
And this is why, again, it's a fascinating conversation that we're having on US politics. But as a business firm from the region, I don't care much. What I care about is what's going on in this part of the world. There has been growth, there has been transformation. Half of the planet is there. Every other day, I have friends that I haven't seen in 15 years that are stopping by the region, that are going to a conference in Riyadh, in Doha, in Dubai, in Abu Dhabi. The world is happening in this part of the world. And again, it's not by accident. It's not. People, yeah, they can criticize. They can say, okay, it's just oil price. It's not the oil price. Oil price has been before. It's been a reset on the way business is being done. It's a reset on the way government is being done. It's a complete reset. And again, I'm going to sound like La La Land. It's potentially an emergence of a new world, a new way of looking at things. I'm going to tell you a story. In 2009, when the crisis hit, I was at a dinner. I live in Dubai, for those that don't know. I was at a dinner, and I had next to me a young lady that was down. I was like, I was chatting, what's going on? She told me, I just lost my job. I was like, big deal. You lost your job, you're going to find another job. She told me, you don't understand, Julien. You're French, you have French nationality. I said, yeah. She said, if I don't have a job, I'm going to have to go back to my country. If I go back to my country, what is it for me? I'm going to live at my parents. I'm going to earn $300-400 per month. I'm not building my life. Here, I'm building my life. And that has been the fundamental shift on the way the GCC is being operated. It's basically an open invitation to the world that says, come, bring your hard work, whoever you are, male, female, color, religion, we don't care. You're hardworking, you're going to succeed. The sky is the limit. And it's a profound reset of the system.
Guys, we're going to have to leave it there because I've kept His Excellency, I think, a little too long. But feel free to run after these guys as we allow them to depart. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
I enjoyed it.
As usual. So when you come to the region next?
Like, get out.
I know.
Well, Abdallah,
That's why it was so good.
doing it. Julian, I enjoyed your comment.